Go as it pleases, here, in Philip's private quarters at El Escorial. A malign, spectral presence, feared even by the king, and manipulating affairs of state from behind his throne. The death of Don Carlos was a godsend for the mythmakers. In reality, the Inquisition was no more the power behind the throne than the inadequate prince was a heroic martyr. It was not that the Inquisition was without influence. The showpiece displays of its status were grandiose occasions held in the main squares of the cities, such as this one in Madrid. These ceremonies, where heretics were sentenced, were known as acts of faith. Present were the competing power brokers, other church authorities, secular institutions, and the aristocracy.
All of these other institutions are powerful. They all have the ear of the king. They are competing and conflicting institutions. So the Inquisition has to operate within that framework. Its power, therefore, is constantly being curbed and opposed by the representatives of other institutions, equally powerful.
It's still possible to capture a sense of the many different power blocks then competing in Spanish society during the Corpus Christi parade in Toledo. Every one of the city's medieval guilds has its own special place in the procession and its own distinctive regalia. Such limitations, however, were as nothing compared to the difficulties encountered by the Inquisition outside the city walls. In 16th century Spain, 4 out of every 5 inhabitants lived in the countryside. The Inquisition was divided into 20 tribunals. Each of them had to cover thousands of square miles. Yet each tribunal had no more than 2 or 3 inquisitors and a handful of administrative clerks. Contemporary accounts reveal that the inquisitors detested and often shirked their sorties into rural Spain. In winter, the roads were impassable, so visitations often had to be undertaken in the burning heat of summer. A letter from a village priest in 1562 is typical. This village, he wrote, does not know the Holy Inquisition.
Era muy difícil controlar las áreas rurales, absolutamente imposible. Y de hecho, cuando lo intentó, se encontró con enormes dificultades. De hecho, podemos decir que durante el siglo XVI y XVII, muchos campesinos castellanos no vieron nunca un inquisidor ni tampoco vieron nunca un auto de fe.
Those inquisitors who persevered with visitations to remote villages encountered a level of ignorance that made a mock of their elaborate theological training. Rural life was precarious, often lived under the threat of starvation. The villagers' beliefs were correspondingly primitive. Their only religious certainty was that death awaited them, and after death, damnation, where their punishment would be ingenious and eternal. But the gulf between the Inquisition and rural Spain was even deeper than appeared at first sight.
Let us be very careful tomorrow when the Inquisitor comes here. For the love of God, don't go telling tales about each other or meddle in things touching the Holy Office.
A parish priest's warning betrays the Inquisition's real problem. Their investigations simply met with a wall of silence. They were alleged to have developed a network of spies to breach it, the familiares.
This is another element that has been greatly misunderstood. The familiares were certainly not a network of spies. They were rather lay individuals who had volunteered to assist the Holy Office in many areas, particularly simply by accompanying prisoners from outlying areas.
The least credible parts of the myth of the Inquisition, I suppose, are those relating to its image as being a super omnipotent institution capable of controlling the thoughts and minds of people. These inquisitors had no power to control society in the way that many historians have imagined that they had. They had no power, they had no function, they didn't have the tools to do the job. And we, in falsifying the image, have given them the tools which have never existed.
Powerless in the country, overshadowed in the city, the real Inquisition is scarcely recognizable from its myth. But it is Verdi's vision which persists of an Inquisition which can command a king and force a subject people to kneel in fear before it. In 1570, 2 years after the death of Don Carlos, the propagandists achieved an even greater coup. The Spanish armies occupying much of Europe were alleged to be paving the way for the introduction of the Spanish Inquisition. A document, now proved a forgery, was circulated. It claimed to reveal that the entire population of one country, the Netherlands, had forfeited any right to life or property. Here was an Inquisition bent on mass killings to punish heresy.
It's when we look at the figures for executions, only dealing with executions as distinct from the psychological impact of the Inquisition, that we come up against a very remarkable fact, namely that in 16th century Spain, and dealing only in terms of Protestant heresy, fewer people died for heresy in Spain than in any other Western country. The Inquisition, for example, in the whole of the 16th century, maybe executed something like about 40 or 50 people at the outside in the whole of Spain, in the whole of the 16th century, and that includes, of course, the whole of America as well. Whereas within a small group of years, which are the reigns of Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, we get at least the execution of 400 English people at the hands of, if we may call it, the English Inquisition, namely the English authorities who were in charge of executing people of the opposing religion. And we get the same figures in other countries. We get the same figures in France, where admittedly it was a Catholic authority. They executed something in the course of 5 or 6 years, they executed something like about 300 people. And so whichever country we look at, we find that the number of people who died for heresy in Spain, or for religious persecution of any sort, here I'm including also the conversos, is minimal compared to other countries. So that really, if every country is living in a glass house, none of them could throw stones, because Spain had the cleanest reputation in terms of killing off heretics than any other Western European nation.
This conclusion is based on the statistical research currently being conducted